Hello everyone. I welcome you all to my new series of videos based on July's People, written by a renowned writer, Nadine Gordimer. In this powerful narrative, Gordimer explores the complex dynamics of apartheid-era in South Africa, delving into the lives of characters caught up in the tumultuous winds of change. She was crystal clear in her attitude in writing the novel because it was her experience living in that particular complex social system. At the heart of the story, she presents us with a character called July, a black servant who used to work to a white family, the Smales family. And further, she focuses on how July becomes a savior to this July's family, while the Smales family, in this political upheaval, because white system was crumbling around them. Godima's prose weaves a tapestry of emotions. She's not only talking about the political situation, not only talking about the conflicting situation that she talks about, that in the macro level of the story, but in the micro level, she's so good at talking about micro emotions. Sometimes people share. Sometimes people are reluctant. Some people who are reluctant to share. Uh, she focuses on these particular emotions very sensitively, bringing life to struggles, triumphs, of the characters grappling with their own humanity in the face of changing society. Therefore, I say that she was a good critic, good observer, and she was very good at empathizing with the human lives. She was very good at penetrating through the human emotions while the macro conflict was going on. This becomes a testament to Godima's storytelling, mainly because of that, because she offers kind of thought-provoking and emotional experience, and she takes us takes us on an exploration of the human conditions of the time of apartheid. So this would be kind of wonderful experience. So join us in this literary journey as we dive into The Lies People, a novel that challenges, inspires, and leaves an incredible mark on the reader's soul. Let's first talk about Nadine Gordimer. She was born in 1923 and becomes a prominent, influential writer, humanist, a political activist in her time. And according to many people, say that she is very insightful in her portrayals, and she was very good at penetrating through, as I said earlier, penetrating through the lives of people when the huge political turmoil was going on. All right, so that she boldly handles this particular narrative, highlighting the racial inequality, social injustice, and how people, general public, pays off once the political turmoils were going on. She talks about the human cost of political turmoil. So further, she talks about the justices of apartheid, injustices of apartheid, and she advises people for a social change. This novel becomes kind of remarkable mainly because of that reason. She appeals the society that this cannot continue like this. So she says that she advocates people that this must be the way of ending apartheid. This must be the way of this must be the fate of people who contribute to this particular conflicting situation. This would be the um, future of blacks, would be the future of whites if the system is going on. What will happen if the system changes? When the system changes, what will the fate of the whites? What will the fate of blacks? She, since she was kind of very sensitive to human conditions, very sensitive to these particular conflicting conditions, her writing becomes identified and ultimately she wins the Nobel Prize in 1991. Let's focus on these 3 years. First 1923, next 1981, and 1994. Let's first focus on 1923. That is the age she was born, as we discussed in the early slide. 1981 is a year that she published this book. So there's a gap of 58 years. Then that non-verbally suggests that she had been going through this particular system, as a white anyway, experienced this particular turmoil. So then this becomes more authentic because critics say that it's almost like a felt experience to Gordimer. It is not kind of alien experience to the writer. She delves into this particular condition. She talks to people. Sometimes she experiences this micro conflict which was going on the backdrop of this macro conflict, right? So what is 1994? That's also quite important because that is the era, that is a year that apartheid system was ended. And when you see the gap, you find 13 years after 1981 to 1994. 1981 to 1994, there is a kind of 13 years gap. What is the importance of that gap? In 1981, in her novel July's People, she suggests that this would be going on in South Africa if this power inversion takes place, if blacks identify their power. She further highlights what would be the lives of whites and lives of blacks. What would be the micro society like family, micro societies like man-woman relationships. If this particular system moves on this particular rhythm, therefore people acclaim her novel, believing that she has she makes a very powerful narrative which she could predict what is going to be after this particular interim. When focusing on the society, we find when focusing on the cross section of the society, South African society, we get four layers. One is the white community. They are not the majority, but they have been identified as the power mainly because of the skin color. Blacks never identified their power mainly because of their slavish mentality. They have been going through this for a long time, so that they have been forced to, otherwise, they have been trained to be the subordinate in front of whites. So black is powerful, otherwise, black is the majority, but they have never understood their powers. Colored is the community, colored is a third community that I discuss here. They're the mixed up races. They have mixed up heritages. Indians, Asian community, consisted of people with Indian and Asian ancestry, many of whom were descendants of indentured laborers brought to South Africa in 19th and 20th centuries. So to sum up the community in the cross section, we find white, black, colored, and Indian Asian community in this particular South African society when this particular conflict was going on. I take you to this particular quotation of Antonio Gramsci, an Italian critic. This is printed at the beginning of the book as a pretext. He says, the crisis consists precisely in the fact that the old is dying and the new cannot be born. In this interregnum, a great variety of morbid symptoms appear. So what are the words that you feel like highlighting in this quotation? I invite you to highlight the term crisis. Crisis, what is the crisis that we find here in relation to July's People, in relation to South Africa? It is a racial conflict, right? It is an apartheid system which was going on, right? So what do you mean by old? What do you mean by new? Okay. He says it precise in the fact that the old is dying. He talks about how old system is crumbling down, and the new cannot be born if unless the old crumbles down, new is not to be born. So uh, there are there's another important factor that he highlights here: the interregnum. What is interregnum? Old, new, the transformation time. Transition is called interregnum. The writer Gordimer writes this novel in the interregnum of South Africa. It is not the beginning, it is not the end, but when the tumultuous, otherwise when the conflict was going on, was her focus. And the writer focuses more on the morbid systems, critical symptoms when this particular interregnum was going on. It's almost like Kali Yuga. It's not the old, it's not the new, the time that transformation exists. So he said, like Gramsci says, there are certain morbid systems in macro and micro level of the levels in the society. In the macro level, so there are certain imbalances. The system was going on in a way. Now, when the change takes place, we find that people are not ready to accept it at once, and some are not ready to accept power. Some are not ready to lose power as well. So that was in the macro level. In the micro level, also, we find this is not my life, so that I'm going to get a new life, right? I was powerful, but now I'm not powerful. The power inversion has sometimes, made the suppressor suppressed and suppressed becomes a suppressor. So there were certain conflicting situations going on, especially people were suffering because of the dilemma condition that they were moving on in their psychologies. They were not ready to understand. They were not ready to accept what was moving on in the society. So to conclude this slide, I say uh, Gramsci talks about the crisis which was going on, and he talks about the old and new system, and he talks about the interregnum, and he talks about the critical morbid symptoms, morbid human symptoms that we can experience when the interregnum is going. So that Gordimer takes this and includes this in the novel because it has a very close relationship. So, in essence, Gramsci is describing a state of societal crisis where established order is crumbling, but the new order has not yet taken its place. During this transitional phase, societies often experience instability, uncertainty, and various problems symbolized by the morbid symptoms. The quote reflects the challenges, complexities inherent in times of profound social and political change. So, this explanation would take you further to understand how this is very close to the novel's core messages the writer tries to pass. Let's focus on the title of the novel. What is the title of the novel? It's a very short one, right? We can keep it in the memory very easily. July's People. It gives kind of personal attitude as well, right? July's People, with the possessive remark. This refers to the central character in the novel July. So the term July is introduced there in the title. That's something remarkable. As I said earlier, it's kind of in the possessive form, Julys, indicating the ownership. Okay, somebody's. Okay, so when you proceed in the novel, when you keep reading the novel, you can find how people struggle with the ownership of certain things. Some people claim ownership for another person, another human, like husband to wife, girlfriend to boyfriend. And some people claim for certain instruments which are around them. Some claim ownership for the land, the little land, the micro land they have, otherwise the land in the country. This would be another suggestion through the title. As we all know, the title is almost like the main door of a house. If you can rather quite nicely open that, you can get into the world of mysteries of a literary text. First, start studying the topic in a serious manner, right? It may reflect the changing power dynamics and relationships between different racial and social groups in South Africa. This title may reflect the changing power. July's people, who are the people that we basically discuss in this particular conflict? There were four social groups. In the previous slide, we discussed them like whites, blacks, colored, and Indians, right? In this conflict, basically, we find two communities like blacks and white involved in this. They involve in this particular conflict. Therefore, we say changing power dynamics of the blacks and white can be seen highlighted in the novel. Who were the blacks? Who were the whites? What were their previous definitions? Whites had the definition of the controller. Blacks had the definition of the controlled, otherwise suppressor and the suppressed dynamic relationship. And how this particular dynamic relationship turns out to be the opposite, like how the role reversal takes place. So there we also find the uh, possessive remark that the title suggests would be really important. July's people. Who are July's people? Is that black? Is that July's family? So we are given kind of a prediction that this might be about uh, ownership of something and possession of something. And are we going to talk about some kind of social group that we own? And this further suggests a sense of personal connection or responsibility that July holds, like July's people, so like my family, my friend, July's people. Who are July's people actually suggested in the novel? One can be July's own family, July's people. One can be July's people in the village. One can be July's black community. July belongs to black community. One can be the white family because they were July's people. The character July had two ends. Like he comes to the village and he used to work in the white family for a long time. There we find it can be related to the white family as that they are also July's people. When they come to the village, July has two Julys people, like the blacks are Julys and whites are also Julys, right? It can be the definition. Um, it can be the identity. Ultimately, we discuss about overall when we consider overall presentation, we say that thematic exploration of identity, power and shifting, so, right? So it tells us July's people, earlier July's people, the definition of early July's people turns out to be a different one. So finally, I say that July's people can be July's people, the black July's people, the white family July's people, uh, uh, his own people, right, in the village. Okay, now let's focus on these important areas. How the writer brings out the fact of inversion of power. First, we see the writer focuses on the relationship between suppressor and suppressed. Okay, servant versus master, if not controller and controlled. So how the controlled community ultimately becomes a controller. Controller community ultimately becomes a control. So this is one of the power dynamics we see in the novel. All right. So when we walk into the novel, we find the power inversion that we see in some other levels as well, like man, woman, educated, less educated, rich and poor. So such micro power dynamics are also there. So, but basically, we talk about the power dynamics between blacks and white, and how that power dynamics, and while the dynamics was going on, there's an interregnum. Okay, old this power to the other power, there's an interregnum. We focus on that in the novel. Basically, in this particular interregnum, what sort of psychology that people share who used to be in that particular side. And the other is the prophecy and appetite. This novel is quite interesting because after 13 years of publishing this novel, apartheid system finds its end. So many of the suggestions, many of the prophecies that she makes in the novel become true and become very practical by the end of the day. So therefore, people say that she's really good in prophesying. She's good at predicting, jesting. So if we could actually summon people like that, we could actually end up apartheid before 13 years. Before 13 years, before that, like before 9 odd time. It's very important for us to focus on that as well. This novel, she suggests that this would be the end of this particular power struggle. This would be the end of this relationship between the controller and control. This would be the future of whites. This would be the future of blacks. If whites behave like this, they would have a future like whites. If blacks behave in this, that would be the future of blacks in the future. She talks about the positives and she talks about the critical outcomes of this particular power dynamics. In her prophecy, we find certain political suggestions. Rather than that, I find that there are certain suggestions that human must take personally to move on in the society of this nature. Even that is applicable for modern society, our society as well, right? So after that, we are going to focus on this hierarchy, starting with white man, white woman, black man, and black woman. This is hierarchy. In many of the literary texts, if you take American, Nigerian American literature, if you take certain other African American literature, we find these four communities are heavy. These communities are separated because of two reasons, basically. One is gender, one is skin color. So in this particular hierarchy, who stands first and who stands last? We find white man stands first, even though we call them kind of developed societies, this white supremacy and white man's supremacy is going. So when it comes to black woman stands as the lowest in the hierarchy. So we find black woman receives suppression from black man. Similarly, she receives suppression from white woman, receives suppression from white man as well. How do you think that the writer presents this particular attitude in the novel? Who is a black woman? Who is a black woman we find in the novel? There are many black women in the novel, starting with Julai's wife. When it comes to Julai's own wife, town woman rather. Okay, and there are some other black women who used to be suffering in the village under this particular patriarchy. So such women always receive the suppression from that. Even though there are no white women and white men, we find the writer inaudibly suggests that if they are there, the black woman would receive this particular suppression inevitably. And when it comes to black man, perhaps we represent black man, not perhaps actually, black man is represented through July. July receives suppression from white woman and white man. This is one of the basic and dramatic interaction we find in the novel. How July tolerates the white woman Maureen, how Maureen attempts to struggle with the black man's condition and the condition of Bam. There we find the white man, white woman condition is quite different from black man and black woman condition related to gender conflict. Okay, there we find Bam has authority and even Maureen has authority. Sometimes we find Bam is attempting to overpower that. Sometimes Maureen is trying to overpower. She becomes self-dependent, self-initiative in her decisions, unlike the black woman. This is also another very important area the reader has to focus on. Then we focus on the setting and evolution. There is a conflict discussed in the novel. As we all know that the conflict can be of two types, like macro conflict and micro conflict. And again, we can divide that into external conflict and internal conflict. If we analyze the term conflict based on such varieties, we feel the macro conflict is at the backdrop of the novel, even though the novel is started with the suggestion of that particular macro conflict between blacks and whites to demolish this particular apartheid system. Majority of the novel discusses of micro conflicts between the one black woman, between one black woman and one black white woman, one black man and one white woman. Likewise, we get micro conflicts suggested in the novel. So therefore, the writer has not failed to talk about the macro conflicts and micro conflicts in the novel. In my opinion, I feel that there are a lot of micro conflicts discussed rather than macro conflicts in the novel. When it comes to gender, we find, um, uh, when it comes to internal and external conflicts, external conflict is the conflict between blacks and white. So amidst that was going on, we find the psychological imbalance of people, especially the dilemma condition of the whites, dilemma conditions of blacks as well. Throughout the novel, we find the insecurities, identity crises, their fears are suggested throughout, focusing more on the internal conflicts of the characters while the external conflict was going. We all know that external conflict can create an internal conflict. Conflict can create another external conflict. That is kind of a chain reaction. So the novelist is suggesting this particular theory as well in the novel. Next is whites moving to the blacks' village. To the white family, it is almost like onward mobility. It is not their life they used to live. So in this particular hard condition that they are helpless, there is no other option for them to get, right? So that they follow July and come to they visit July's village. In July's village, the first thing that they experience is the hard conditions that blacks used to live in this particular country. Then we actually get a question: who created South Africa at that particular time was not really a downgraded sort of a country. Whites had a life because of the economic conditions suggested in the novel, like diamond mines, gold mines, and all. Whites enjoyed the power. Whites enjoyed the economic power as well. While it was going on, the majority blacks were suffering because the equal rights or equal opportunities were not given for them. So when the white family comes to the black village, they practically, authentically experience what they had created to blacks. So the novelist actually wondrously creates kind of a journey of a white family to the black village, uh, as if to show that this is the world you have created to blacks, so that live in that for a little time. So the hardships they move through, okay, the economic hardships, the physical hardships, sometimes low sanitary facilities they experience, lack of power, uh, kind of lack of communication. With all these, we find uh, the white family authentically experience particular condition created for black people in their own country. So this is something very important, right? This is something in my case, I feel this is very sarcastic as well. They come they dig the grave for people. Ultimately, they fall into that particular dig. I mean, uh, the grave. So uh, somehow or the other, the white family having no other option, the white family has to immerse that particular condition. They are entrapped in that particular condition without having any other option. So at that particular condition, they personally experience the hardships that black families were going through. And next, we talk about the revelation of power relationships. As we discussed earlier, we discussed about the power of gender and how that is presented in the novel, power of races and how that is presented in the novel, rich and poor, and sort of power of education, how what community gets education, what community doesn't get education. Is also quite nicely presented now. And finally, the children. What is the reason that children are included in the novel by Gordimer? It's a quite nice suggestion. We know in any community, children are built up with less prejudice compared to adults. When they grow up, usually we know when a child grows up from the society, they absorb several prejudices and they grow out to be an adult. The child that I used to be, uh, I is not what I am now. I have a lot of prejudices regarding certain things. So maturity would be something like that in my case, in my definition, right? We mature, but we add a lot of prejudices to our lives. So in the case of children, I find um, they grow up with little prejudices so that they easily move, they acculturate. So when we take the three types of children presented in the novel, first is Maureen's past. Maureen and Maureen's black servant, Lydia, how she interacted with her. We often forget that particular child. Maureen had a child in her. Okay, Maureen made a child in her. Maureen's childhood was is presented in the novel with interaction of Lydia. In this particular interaction, we find Lydia and Maureen were very close to each other. They were they started empathizing with each other very smoothly. They were started empathizing with each other. They started tolerating each other. They had sense of humor between them. They had secrets they shared. All right. Maureen really loved the maternal love, friendship offered by this black soul. But the very Maureen, when she comes to an adult, her attitude towards the blacks are rather critical. What makes a difference? So that writer undoubtedly talks about how children grow up, how children grow up to be kind of prejudiced white, how white children grow to be kind of prejudiced people by the end of the day. It's quite important for us to focus. Then we focus on the children, three children come to this particular village. White children, white male children, right? First is Victor, Gina, and Royce. Who are they? Are they just children? Are they? Do you think that they are kind of representing kind of social groups? The elder, Victor, is not really easily moving with the black community. He has kind of drawbacks, right? He has certain weaknesses, and he doesn't want to straight away go and talk. And he doesn't like that culture as well. He has certain way of behaving. He has kind of supreme way of behaving with the blacks. In the case of Gina, she's quite different. Gina tries to culture. It's to learn that particular language. She's trying to make friends. She wants to go into that. She wants to be useful. So it can be one suggestion given by the writer. If this apartheid system is ended, if you stay like Victor, you can't survive. You have to be like Gina. So Gina is ready to change, right? If you stay like Victor, that you would find kind of difficult time to cope up with this power exchange, power inversion. What about the last one? The last one is Royce. Royce doesn't know much about this particular community, doesn't realize what's going on. He on and off requests certain, he on and off makes certain impractical requests like buying a pizza, buying Coca-Cola and all these. He doesn't understand what's going on. Okay. He might be the next level of community, people who never understand this power exchange, right? Now, for example, when the LTT Sri Lankan army condition was going on, people who were born in that particular time knew the conflict, but people who were born after that, they never knew that what was going on, right? They never knew what was going on. So rice would be a representation of a community which had lack of prejudice over this particular situation. So that writer would make a suggestion. If you stay like Gina and like Rice like that, you can win this particular world. Otherwise, the interaction after this interregnum would be really difficult. If the blacks come to power, how can you interact with blacks if you still have that prejudice over blacks? In this power exchange, power inversion, you have to rather accept that particular power of blacks. So how are we going to do that? You have to acculturate, right? You rather can't um, be reserved and stay in your own world, right? So the next set of children we discuss in the novel is black children. And in comparison, we find they are having kind of very, uh, they find kind of unfortunate lives. They don't get education much. They don't have things to eat. The whites, for example, the incident of sausage, it was kind of beggarly impression that the writer tried, that little child who gets that particular sausage with both hands, like of getting the offering, uh, getting kind of blessing from someone. So makes kind of very pathetic situation, right? They too work. It's their country, it's their soil, so that they too must earn their own kind of equal situations. But the pathetic situation is they don't get that equal situation, equal experience. So the writer tries to show tries to juxtapose these two communities and show how pathetic the black community's children's condition is. This actually brings out kind of eye opener. So that this obviously suggests that there should be a need of equality, especially to grow up in this particular world. That you need to have kind of equality to uh, the development of children. Okay, there can be very good children who have aspirations in their lives. If they are not given chances, that they would not rather develop. So this is the end of the discussion related to the first part of the novel. So I plan to meet in the next video. So let's meet in the next video, and I'll be focusing more on the chapters, focusing more on the thematic concerns where we find in the novel. So let's meet in the next video. Thank you very much.